The Scofflaw Magician, Book 3 of the Artifactor series, by Raconteur. Read by Raconteur. Chapter 1. What in the world was that clamor? It sounded like a battle was going on in her backyard. Savannah, having pulled an all-nighter to finish a project for a client, did not wake up quickly or easily, even after being unconscious for 6 hours. In fact, she probably would have kept on sleeping if not for her Ileanic wolf pup insistently sticking his nose into her ribs. Blearily coming awake, she batted him away and rose up onto one elbow. "I hear it! I hear it!" Gryden let out a yip and his tail started wagging, no doubt satisfied he'd finally gotten a response from her. At 6 months old, he had grown considerably, and he now had enough body mass to him that when his tail wagged, the whole head vibrated. He jumped off the bed and went to the ground, then looked back at her with an obvious, "Well, come on." Unlike with most dogs, wolves, pets of any sort, that signal did not mean he wanted to go outside for personal business. The Ileanic wolves were intelligent enough to open most doors used by man, and could find their way in and out of buildings as they pleased. Even if that were not the case, Big would just open the door for him if he needed it. So Savannah interpreted that body language to mean something serious was happening outside, something that she needed to handle, and she really had to get up. Now. Groaning and growling a few choice words, she swung her legs over the side of the bed into the cold stone floor. She hissed as her bare skin touched the icy coldness of the floor, growled some more, but kept moving until she was fully dressed. During this process, Gryden danced around in front of her bedroom door, impatiently waiting for her to actually leave the room. As she buttoned up her vest, she realized that her first impression of a battlefield out behind Big might actually be dead on instead of a simple metaphor. She could hear trumpets sounding out long notes in hauntingly hollow tones, a great deal of shouting, and the clamor of metal striking something solid. How completely strange. What on earth would be the point of having a battle here? There was no large human settlement on the western border of Windermere. In fact, no large settlement of any kind could be found here except, perhaps, the Fae. Even after 4 months of regularly going in and out of their territory, she had no idea how big their village was. But suggesting that a human army would march against the Fae ranked right up there with trying to build a dam in a typhoon in terms of ridiculousness. Aside from needing a very good reason to go to war with the Fae in the first place, no human stood much of a chance against them, no matter how many in number there were. But the only other possibility that came to her mind was that 2 of the other mythical races that lived in Nauper's woods were battling it out, which made even less sense. Everyone had cohabited peacefully in the woods for the past several centuries, and she had not seen any reason for tension. So what would cause this flare-up? Since her own conjectures just confused her further, she snatched up a sword and jacket and headed straight for the front door. "Big, what's going on?" "Visitor. Front room." Big sounded distinctly nervous. That made her pause in mid-step, and she looked up at him in surprise. Big? Nervous? The only time she'd seen that happen was when he'd found Baby as a cub and didn't know what to do with him. Being as indestructible as a, mountain, Big usually let most incidents slide without too much concern. If he was worried, then she should be outright panicked. With that thought in mind, she dove into her workroom for her magical pouch even as she demanded, "Who?" "Fae." She fumbled and dropped the pouch. Fae. She had a Fae in her mountain? "I now understand why you're nervous. Why is he or she here?" "To speak with you." Her first thought was that something must be wrong with one of the kids that she'd brought to them, although what she couldn't begin to imagine. But then again, maybe it had something to do with all that racket in her backyard. The Fae would not be tolerant of any antics so close to their territory. Gulping nervously, she hastily scooped up the bag from the floor and belted it on, even as she spun on a heel and went for the front room. The Fae stood in the center of the room, idly staring upwards at the light charm she had sticking to the ceiling. When she entered, he dropped his gaze, and a look of relief flashed over his face before he adopted his customary composure. "Savannah." She let out a breath, panic receding. "Lorien." She had seen him many times over the past few months. He was the one that typically accepted the children she brought, ever since she'd handed Sky over to him. The other Fae were not interested in forming human connections, but Lorien had proven to be an amiable business partner, if not friend. "What is going on?" she asked for the second time that morning. Well, it was closer to afternoon, but regardless. There is a human army attempting to penetrate our borders and invade Nopper's woods, he answered succinctly. Even though she had harbored that wild speculation not minutes ago, she still stared at him blankly, not quite able to wrap her mind around the idea. Why? We hoped that you would know their purpose. He spread his hands palm up in a graceful shrug. They have made no declarations to us.